There's a reason governments across the world are suddenly terrified of one car company. Not Ferrari, not Toyota, not even Tesla. It's a Chinese automaker that's selling brand new electric cars for less than what some people spend on a decent gaming PC. And depending on who you ask, this company is either the bright future of transportation or one of the most dangerous and controversial disruptions the auto industry has ever seen. Because behind BYD's explosive rise sits a story packed with massive government money, brutal trade wars, shocking labor scandals, political panic, and one big question that nobody can fully answer. How does a company sell a brand new electric car for under $8,000 while so much of the world's auto industry struggles just to survive? BYD, short for Build Your Dreams, is no longer just another EV startup. In 2025, it officially became the biggest electric vehicle manufacturer on the planet. Not just in China. Globally, the company delivered around 4.6 million new energy vehicles in a single year. And for the first full calendar year ever, BYD passed Tesla in pure battery electric vehicle sales. That alone sent shockwaves through the entire industry. Tesla delivered around 1.64 million battery EVs. BYD crossed roughly 2.26 million. At the same time, BYD's overseas growth exploded. Exports surged more than 150% in only 12 months. And much of that momentum came from a tiny, affordable hatchback called the Seagull. In China, the Seagull starts at roughly $7,800. The price of a used economy car in many countries. That number almost sounds fake. In many markets, that wouldn't even cover the cost of a replacement battery pack. Yet somehow, BYD still makes a profit. Their gross margins sit right up there with the best in the business. That's exactly where the controversy begins. Critics argue the company isn't competing under normal market conditions. In 2025 alone, BYD reportedly received around 12.47 billion yuan in direct government subsidies. That's nearly $1.8 billion US. According to financial breakdowns, that amount represented roughly 38% of the company's entire net profit. Think about that for a second. A huge chunk of the company's earnings didn't come from customers. It came straight from the state. And what worried analysts even more was the direction of the numbers. The support wasn't shrinking as the company scaled up. It was accelerating. Billions in 2023. Even more in 2024, and higher still in 2025. Normally, companies become less dependent on help as they grow. BYD appeared to be doing the opposite. If you're enjoying this deep dive so far, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. But this story gets even bigger once you zoom out from BYD itself. Researchers from international policy groups estimate that China poured hundreds of billions of dollars into its entire electric vehicle sector over the last decade and a half. And even those huge numbers are considered conservative because they often leave out hidden support like discounted land, ultra-low interest loans, local incentives, infrastructure giveaways, raw material assistance, and favorable financing from state banks. In other words, critics believe Chinese EV companies aren't simply competing against Western automakers. They're competing with the full force of an entire economic system standing behind them. And that changes everything. To be fair, subsidies are not unique to China. The United States subsidizes EV production. Europe subsidizes EV production. Tesla benefited from subsidies. Rivian benefited from massive government loans and tax breaks. Traditional automakers received enormous transition support. But many analysts argue the scale and intensity in China operate on a completely different level. That difference is exactly why so many governments suddenly started reacting with aggression. Tariffs began appearing almost everywhere. The United States imposed massive 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Europe added countervailing duties on top of existing import taxes. Canada introduced strict restrictions. Brazil raised import taxes sharply. India repeatedly blocked major BYD expansion plans. Even BYD's ambitious proposed factory in Mexico reportedly collapsed under heavy geopolitical pressure. At this point, the company wasn't just selling cars anymore. It had become a central player in a much larger global economic and political conflict. And yet, even with all that resistance, something uncomfortable remains true. The company is also genuinely good at building cars. Very good. That's what makes this whole debate so frustrating and complicated. If BYD simply made terrible products, the conversation would be easy. But they don't. The company manufactures an enormous percentage of its own components in-house. Batteries, motors, semiconductors, electronics, seats, glass, lighting, and even some of the ships used to transport vehicles internationally. That extreme level of vertical integration gives BYD a massive real-world cost advantage. Some industry estimates suggest their manufacturing costs can run dramatically lower than many competitors, which means the low prices are not entirely artificial. There is serious engineering efficiency at work. And that's exactly where the line becomes blurry. How much of BYD's dominance comes from true innovation? And how much comes from powerful state-backed industrial muscle? Nobody seems able to fully agree. Then the story took a much darker turn. In late 2024, Brazilian labor prosecutors raided a BYD-linked construction site in Camaçari, Bahia. What they allegedly discovered was disturbing. Investigators rescued 163 Chinese workers living under conditions the authorities officially compared to modern slavery. Passports had been confiscated. Large portions of wages, reportedly 60 to 70%, were withheld and sent back to China. Workers had paid heavy mandatory recruitment fees just to get hired. The living conditions were appalling. 31 workers sharing a single bathroom. 600 workers relying on just 8 chemical toilets. Beds without mattresses. Food piled on the ground. 4 a.m. wake-up calls, and stretches of up to 25 days without rest. The contractor running the site was a company called Jinjiang Construction Brazil. BYD's response split dramatically depending on the audience. Executives in Brazil promised full cooperation with local laws. But back in China, the company's PR director blamed hostile foreign forces for smearing Chinese brands. That disconnect only fueled more outrage. Prosecutors later escalated, filing a major civil suit alleging human trafficking and demanding tens of millions in damages. Yet despite everything, the factory still moved forward and was inaugurated. And then the same disturbing pattern repeated almost identically in Hungary. Labor investigations documented long 70-plus-hour workweeks, heavy recruitment debt bondage, visa and healthcare issues, and exploitative conditions at another major BYD construction site. Once again, the same contractor network appeared connected. 2 continents. 2 massive projects. Similar serious allegations. It stopped looking like isolated incidents. At that point, the conversation around BYD shifted. It stopped being only about cheap electric cars. Now it was also about ethics, labor standards, and accountability. And still, the company kept growing at an astonishing pace. Despite tariffs, scandals, investigations, and political pushback, BYD continued expanding across global markets. In Europe, registrations surged dramatically. The company even outsold Tesla in certain periods. Its new Hungarian factory became strategically vital because local production would help bypass many import duties. While critics focused on subsidies and labor controversies, engineers inside the auto industry kept paying close attention to something else. The technology. BYD's research spending reached billions of dollars. The company employs one of the largest engineering workforces on Earth. Patent filings arrive at a staggering rate. Its blade battery technology earned respect from competitors, with some even forming partnerships. In 2025, BYD unveiled ultra-fast charging systems capable of adding massive range in just minutes. That's not fake innovation. That's real technological progress, which creates the biggest problem for the rest of the auto industry. If BYD were only surviving on subsidies, the model would eventually collapse. But if the company also possesses genuine manufacturing advantages, serious engineering talent, and unmatched production scale, then this may represent something far larger. A permanent shift in automotive power. That possibility is exactly why so many Western executives suddenly sound nervous. Ford's CEO openly praised BYD as one of the best in the business. Elon Musk warned that without trade barriers, Chinese automakers could overwhelm most global competitors. Other industry leaders described the Chinese offensive as one of the biggest risks facing both legacy automakers and Tesla. The labor allegations are real. The subsidies are real. The trade wars are real. The recalls and quality concerns in some reports are real. The political tension is real. But the innovation is real too. The engineering is real. The manufacturing scale is real. The disruption is very real. Calling BYD an outright scam oversimplifies a complex story. But pretending the company rose purely through normal open market competition also oversimplifies it. The truth sits somewhere in the uncomfortable middle. BYD may not be the biggest fraud in the auto industry, but it could very well become the company that permanently changes who controls the future of cars. And right now, governments around the world still seem undecided on whether to fear that future, copy it, or try to stop it before it becomes unstoppable. If this video helped you understand the real BYD story, then please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think BYD is a genius company or a subsidized threat? I read every comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Please subscribe me guys, I need your support.